Diaz moved into the house on Weller Lane because it was quiet. Too quiet. The neighbors didn't speak of it. When he asked, they only shook their heads or changed the subject. The landlord had been in a hurry, sliding the lease across the table without meeting Diaz's eyes. Cheap rent, no questions asked. That was enough. The house itself was unremarkable at first glance. A narrow two-story structure with peeling paint and a yard overgrown with weeds. Inside smelled of dust and wood rot. The wallpaper faded in strange patches, as if something had pressed against it for too long. The first night, Diaz noticed the echoes. Every sound lingered a second too long, as if the walls were reluctant to release it. He would cough, and after a pause, the sound came back, slightly warped, almost as though someone else repeated it from down the hall. He tested it by clapping his hands. The echo returned, but slower, deeper, wrong. By the third night, the echoes seemed to form words. He closed a drawer in the kitchen and heard a faint whisper. Stay. He dropped a glass on the floor, and the shattering replayed itself moments later, followed by, again. Diaz froze, listening. The house breathed around him, timber shifting in the cold. The fourth night, he tried speaking directly. Standing in the empty living room, he said aloud, "Who's there?" The walls answered with his own voice, stretched and sluggish. "There." He laughed nervously, convincing himself it was acoustics. Old houses carried sound strangely. His rational mind clung to that explanation. But deep down, he already knew something was wrong, because the echoes didn't just mimic him, they remembered. By the fifth night, Diaz couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt deliberate. Every echo sharpened until it pierced his nerves. He lay awake in bed, listening. The house seemed to breathe, boards flexing, plaster groaning. Then, just past midnight, footsteps began in the hallway outside his room. Bare, slow, deliberate. Diaz held his breath. The steps stopped at his door. He whispered, "Hello." The house whispered back, "Hello." Not an echo. Not delayed. The word came instantly, perfectly. And it came from the stairwell in his own voice. Diaz froze. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then faintly, other sounds joined in. The voices of his earlier days in the house, echoing back at once. "Stay." Again. There." Fragments layered and overlapped, growing louder, spilling out of the walls, filling the air. He clamped his hands over his ears, but the sound didn't stop. It was inside him now, vibrating in his skull, in his chest. He staggered into the hallway, candle in hand. The shadows shifted strangely, bending with the echoes. He saw movement at the top of the stairs, just a shimmer, like heat rising off asphalt. Then his own voice rang out, sharp and clear. Already inside. The candle flame guttered, nearly dying. Diaz backed into his room, slamming the door shut. The house fell silent. But when he turned, the mirror above the dresser was fogged, as though someone had breathed against it. And in the glass, written with an invisible finger, was a single word: stay. The silence after the writing on the mirror was worse than the voices. Diaz wiped at the glass, but the word wouldn't vanish. Stay. It seemed burned into the reflection, etched into the surface of his own image. He didn't sleep that night. He sat with the candle guttering low, waiting for dawn. But dawn never came. The window remained black, as if the outside world had been swallowed. At midnight, the echoes returned. Not fragments this time. Full sentences, spoken in his voice, overlapping, surrounding him. "You don't belong anywhere else. We keep you now. Never alone." Diaz stumbled into the hallway, covering his ears, but the sound followed, layered on itself until it became a chorus. Every board he stepped on answered him with a whisper. Every wall pressed closer, repeating, reshaping his words until he no longer recognized them. He screamed, "Let me out!" The house answered instantly with perfect clarity. "Let me in." The candle died. Darkness fell. He ran, blind, reaching for the front door. His hand found the knob, twisted, only to feel his own hand twisting back from the other side. A mirror-slick surface pressed against his palm. Cold fingers, his own fingers curled around his. The echoes surged, no longer delayed but simultaneous. His voice multiplied, roaring from every surface. "You will never leave." The door swung open. On the other side was himself, standing in the dark, smiling faintly. The house fell silent. The next morning, the neighbors passing Weller Lane swore they heard two voices speaking in unison, inside the abandoned house. But everyone knew no one had lived there in years, at least no one who left. When Arman moved into the old house at the edge of town, he told himself it was nothing more than a building. 4 walls, a roof, and cheap rent. That was all he needed, but the windows unsettled him. From the street, they looked ordinary, dusty glass panes in chipped wooden frames. But inside, they stretched too high,
reaching almost to the ceiling.
as though the house wanted them larger, hungrier. At night, they reflected more than just the room behind him. The first night passed without incident. On the second, he woke to a faint tapping, rhythmic, deliberate. He sat up, eyes drawn to the bedroom window. Someone was looking in, a pale face pressed against the glass. The features were blurred, almost melted like candle wax, but the eyes were sharp, unblinking, fixed on him. Arman froze, his throat closed, refusing to scream. He blinked once and the face dissolved into darkness, leaving only his own reflection. He told himself it was a dream, a half-waking hallucination. But on the third night, the face returned. It hovered at the glass longer this time, its lips parted, moving soundlessly. Arman stumbled backward, whispering no. The window whispered back in his own voice, yes. The sound did not echo. It came from the glass itself. By the fourth night, Arman avoided the windows entirely. He kept the curtains drawn, refusing to look. But deep down, he knew that wouldn't matter. Curtains couldn't hide him from whatever was already watching. By the fifth night, Arman stopped sleeping. He sat awake in the dark, listening for the tapping, waiting for the pale blur at the glass. It always came. At first, the face hovered outside the bedroom. Then it appeared in the hallway window, its gray features pressed against the pane as though the glass were thin ice. Later, Arman saw it at the kitchen window, where no one could possibly stand. Always the same blurred face, the same unblinking eyes. But on the sixth night, the terror sharpened into something worse. It wasn't a stranger staring in anymore. It was him. The face in the window was Arman's own, older, gaunter, drained of life. The hollow eyes mirrored his own movements a second too late. Lips parting in a grotesque smile he didn't make. Arman whispered, "This isn't real." The window fogged as if someone breathed against it from the outside. Slowly, with a finger unseen, words formed in the mist. "Look." His chest tightened. Against all reason, Arman obeyed. Beyond the glass, the world shifted. The yard was gone, the street vanished. Instead, endless corridors stretched outward, lined with doors, each one reflecting another window. Each window reflecting another face, his face. Dozens of Armans pressed against the glass from the other side. Some wept, some smiled, some mouthed words he couldn't hear. All were staring directly at him. The window shivered in its frame, begging to open. Arman staggered back, but the voices came then, soft and layered. His own voice multiplied 100 times over, whispering in unison. "You are already inside." Arman barely slept, too afraid of what he'd see waiting in the glass. But by the seventh night, exhaustion dragged him under. He awoke to silence. No tapping, no whispers. The curtains stirred gently, though the window was shut tight. For a moment, relief touched him. Maybe it was over. Then the glass cracked. A thin fracture spread across the window, spidering outward. From the other side, his own hollow eyes stared back, smiling faintly. The crack widened with each heartbeat, until the reflection pressed a hand against the glass. Arman froze. He watched his own hand push through, pale and cold, pressing into his room as if the window were no barrier at all. The whispers rose again, hundreds of voices, all his own. "Come closer." "Let me in." "Stay." The other Arman leaned forward through the cracking pane, lips brushing the glass, whispering with absolute clarity. "There is no outside." The window shattered. Glass rained across the floor, but beyond it was no night sky, no yard, no street. Only the same endless corridors, lined with doors and windows, each filled with watching faces. Arman stumbled back, but the faces leaned forward in unison, pressing against their panes, whispering the same words until the house itself seemed to chant them. "Already inside. Already inside. Already inside." The last thing Arman saw was his own reflection stepping fully into the room, smiling with his face but eyes no longer his. The candle blew out. The next morning, neighbors swore they saw movement in the upstairs, windows of the old house at the edge of town, but the panes were broken long ago. DR chose the old house because it was cheap, because no one else wanted it. He didn't ask why the price was so low. He just wanted quiet. But quiet wasn't what he found. On his very first night, he noticed things that didn't add up. The locks were new, but the wood around them was splintered, scarred with pry marks. The basement door had 3 separate bolts. And in the upstairs hallway, the wallpaper was torn in places where deep scratches cut into the plaster beneath. He told himself the house was just old. That was all. Then, on the second night, he dreamed of footsteps pacing his bedroom floor. He woke to find the window open, though he was certain he'd locked it. By the third night, he wasn't dreaming anymore. Someone was in the house. He heard the breathing first, low, heavy, deliberate. It came from the hallway beyond his door. DR pressed his back against the wall, clutching the lamp, heart pounding. Then the floorboards groaned. A slow step. Then another. He forced himself to look and froze. At the end of the hall, half hidden in shadow, stood a figure. Broad shoulders, head cocked unnaturally to one side, watching. DR blinked. The figure was gone. Only the empty hallway remained. But when he turned back toward the bedroom, he saw it again, reflected in the mirror across the room, standing behind him. The lamp flickered, and a whisper brushed his ear, too close to be imagined. "You can't leave. Not this time." By the fourth night, DR realized the house wasn't just shelter. It was something else, something designed to keep him in. The locks worked against him. Doors that opened easily in daylight refused to budge at night, their handles rattling uselessly in his grip. Windows he tried to force shut wouldn't stay closed. When he turned away, they slid open again, as though inviting someone inside. And always there were the sounds, the steady drag of boots across floorboards, the slow, heavy breathing in the dark, the subtle scrape of metal against plaster, like a knife being drawn along the walls. The figure never showed its face. It stayed just beyond the edge of light, watching, waiting. But the house seemed to help it, guiding DR into corners, making hallways longer, doors leading him back to where he'd started. One night he ran for the front door, heart hammering, only to find himself in the basement instead. The air was damp, thick with mold, but beneath it he smelled something sharper, copper, metallic, blood. In the corner stood an old chair bolted to the floor. Its arms were dark with stains. Chains dangled from its sides, clinking softly in the stillness. And on the wall above it, gouged deep into the stone, were tally marks, dozens, hundreds. DR stumbled back, gagging. Behind him, the door slammed shut. The breathing was in the room with him now. DR pressed himself against the basement wall, searching for a way out, but the room gave him none. The chain on the chair rattled softly, though he hadn't touched it. The breathing grew louder, closer. He raised the lamp with a shaking hand, the light quivering across damp stone. At last, the figure stepped forward. The man's face was partly hidden in shadow, but the grin was unmistakable, wide, unnatural, carved into his features. In one hand, he held a knife blackened with age, its edge catching the faint light. DR tried to speak, but no sound left his throat. The man tilted his head, studying him like prey, then whispered words that froze his blood. "I never left. I've always been here." The house groaned around them, floorboards shifting above as though approving. The walls seemed to lean inward, closing him inside. DR turned and slammed his fists against the basement door, but it held firm. When he spun back, the figure was gone. Only the chair remained, chains open, waiting. The lamp flickered, then died. In the suffocating dark, DR felt hands that weren't his own grip, his wrists, pulling him toward the chair. The chains clamped shut with metallic certainty. And in the black silence that followed, he finally understood. The house wasn't cursed because of the man. The man belonged to the house, and now so did he.